Alright, this video for the, I guess the DraftScience forum. It's on the two slit experiment, so I'll put it in that category. And just getting to the most recent, where things stand now in terms of arguments about why the two slit experiment is not nail in the coffin style great evidence of wave theory of light, or some kind of validation of some sort of quantum mechanical perspective, in the sense that the most glaring problem is that the wave mechanic they are assuming is something similar to water waves. The interference pattern, the creation of bars, does not explain this. The pattern creating these extra dead spots, the two slit bars being inside the single slit pattern, so to speak, the combination of two patterns. There's no quantum mechanical prediction of that. There's no classical prediction. Water waves don't do that. And there's no mechanical explanation. Huygens doesn't explain it. There's nothing provided defining why it does that. And it's the signature of the two-slit experiment. So, in the next segments, I'll show. I'm going to try doing the experiment in a few different ways, and I am attempting to duplicate the size numbers for this pattern, which only has 5 bars. So, lots of double slit images, right? This one has some 13, I think, in the center. This is obviously just a cutout of this. This is this. They just cut it out because that's what they like to do. They like to keep it simple because they can't explain the truth. So they just keep doing this like that's all there is. That's not all there is. Not by a long shot. And you'll see this over and over again. Over and over again. They'll keep implying that it isn't doing this. 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 Again, and this is supposed to be nail in the coffin style evidence. And I'd argue that if it's going to be evidence used to draw conclusions, hard conclusions, it should be more representative of the facts and the truth. And they do keep emphasizing, Young's double slit experiment. This is how Young's double slit experiment was actually done. The best they could model it. Wasn't much of an experiment in terms of it didn't have much sophistication. It certainly didn't have what we now know to be the double slit experiment, which is the extra humps. So I'm just seeing if this is Dr. Quantum style bullshit. Young's double slits. Always misrepresented. This is the pattern. 13, 16 of them maybe here. 5 or 6 over here. 3 over here. Where do these dark spots come from? The double darks. There's their dresses on some women who probably shouldn't be wearing them. All chunky. A little chunky for the two-slit dress. Anyway. So here it is with 5 bars again. So that again is the one I'm after. See if I can duplicate it. So they don't have, like I said, they just do this over and over again. Here, look, bar, bar, bar. Another thing I've noticed is there's such variance in these patterns. Obviously, you know, you can do them certain ways to get certain results. Now, this was done with light. This pattern is produced by a 100 micron thick impediment and 25 micron thick slits, supposedly. But if you look at these patterns, this center is supposed to be twice as bright as the quarter from the if you go up 1/4 from the black, you should get something that's half as bright as the center. I don't see that in any of these patterns. So again, it's always displayed as this bar, 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 bar. No, this is always drawn. Okay, this is the accuracy here in the drawing, not in their wave dynamics. Their wave equations don't do this. Yeah. So there's Dr. Quantum bullshit. It's another one with 5 bars. And the 6th one's almost visible. Dr. Quantum. Again, the same old routine. No double darks created. No double darks. No double darks. So I'm just saying, nail in the coffin evidence should be complete, validated, verified, finished. This is the typical way of distorting the perspective. So they just took the center portion, so they're not showing you getting it dark and then getting light again, then getting dark and getting light again. And they're comparing the single slit at what the single slit does when you have a very small slit opening. But again, the single slit at that brightness would still be creating fringes over here that they're not showing. So these are definable as distortions, presentations that aren't accurate. Again, shown in one context, where this doesn't really represent the double slit. In a different context, this hump is much larger in the second group of bars. Again, you wouldn't say this is 90 times more than this. At least I don't think you would. This was the one where they cover one of the slits. It's one I like. It's interesting. Another thing I'd like to try to duplicate. So that's the real issue that's still on the table. I mean, the complete argument is that waves don't do what light does. It's not, because they have something in common, one thing in common, doesn't mean they have everything in common. And light doesn't have any appearance to be functioning like a wave, in the sense that it doesn't spread, it doesn't go all kinds of places. As Richard Feynman would say, it goes from point A to point B in a straight line, unless something messes with it. And the only thing that messes with it is it has to hit an electron. It has to get wiggled, get messed with. And again, there isn't any influence that the evidence suggests beyond the fact that the photon has to completely interact with an electron. It can't partially interact. So it gets absorbed and readmitted. Alright, so that's probably enough for this video, just arguing what the contention is. The contention is quantum mechanics is not predicting the double slit pattern. There's no mechanism, there's no explanation for the double slit pattern. the true pattern. And the fact that you have an on-off pattern, the simplest pattern that can be called a pattern, should not be reason to jump to conclusions. Because a paramecium attempts to escape, so to speak, doesn't mean a paramecium is saying, I need to escape. Doesn't mean a paramecium is doing anything like what we do when we assess a circumstance and escape. It's not thinking about it. And you could draw an assumption that it's thinking, but it's the wrong thing to do because there isn't enough evidence to support giving parameciums thinking capacity. They're reactive organisms. Alright, so I will show the creation of my version of the experiment, and then I guess I'll get around to actually doing some of it, but we'll see. Maybe I'll post this without, I'll wait to post another video showing the results, because I plan on doing more than one experiment and want to change things, do a lot of stuff, so that could take a while. But anyway, see how it goes. We'll see what else is on this video. You'll see. I'll probably find out too. So anyway, the two-slit experiment is not nail in the coffin evidence. Alright, something else I observed that was curious. So I made a device similar to this, except made out of razor blades and such. What I noticed was, and it's a little tricky to try to see how close you are, how fine. It's a very thin slit. Really thin. What I noticed was if you use light, like if you use backlight to see the slit, the interesting thing is if you use a magnifier to try to see the impediment, and you can focus on it, you end up seeing the distortion. So you can't see the center of impediment. Even though you have the right magnification for it, and even though it's in focus, you can't see it if it's backlit. That is, if the light's coming through the slit, you actually end up seeing the double slit pattern ends up breaking the image quality. And it's only when you keep it far away, when you use a magnification from a distance, that you end up getting much better resolution of the slit, because then the amount of light you're looking at is the light coming from the light less likely to have been diffracted by the slit, the light less likely to have been influenced, and it went straight through. It went through the opening. It didn't go near the edges, would be my argument. And so it isn't distorted. So then you can see how good how close the slits are, and how, And so I did find that interesting also. I mean, it's something I didn't expect. I should have expected it, but I hadn't thought about it. As, backlight is very different than light looking at the slit where it doesn't get diffracted. So anyway, okay, enough said. So, till next time, continuing nowish. Alright, draft physics video. So, just figured I'll make a video explaining what I'm going to do here in this two-slit experiment, and also, make the argument about what's missing in terms of the predictive value of wave theory when it comes to the two-slit experiment. So I have a couple of razor blades I'm going to use, and I'm going to use a human hair that I'm going to change by spray painting it eventually, but to vary the experiment. The experiment I'm trying to duplicate had numbers of about 100 micrometers for the middle impediment. That's about the dimension of a human hair, and a slit width of 25 micrometers, which is really, really small. I had a misunderstanding in terms of my understanding of nanometers in terms of perspective. I thought there were 100,000 nanometers in a in a millimeter, and it's really a million. So a nanometer is a million times smaller than a tenth of a centimeter, a millimeter. Very small. So this is sort of relevant to arguments that have been made about when the slit width diminishes to the wavelength of the light. This is supposed to be some sort of point where they demonstrate that there's some sort of conclusion you can draw about the pattern. Well, I would argue that it 10,000 times smaller than a human hair, such a slit isn't going to be allowing much light to get through anyway. Regardless, it can't possibly be all that relevant. But anyway, so I'm just going to proceed to make this, and I'll just do other videos explaining what I'm going to make it so I can vary the width of the two slits, and the hair will be in the middle, that kind of thing. And I'll use a pretty strong magnifier to image the final result. So anyway, be back when there's progress and such. Alright, so here's the semi-finished setup. I will now set up the microscoping camera. It's not really a microscope, but you can sort of see the hair is in there still. Light gets through, and I can move the razor blades and the paper clips, keep them in position. So it's a pretty good device for making some changes. And so I'll set up the microscope now. Alright, took like forever, but so there it is under the sort of a microscope, cheap microscope, not quite a microscope. And you can not quite see, but the hair is here in the middle, and these are the two edges of the razor blade. So if they figure the hair is 75 or 100 micrometers, then this distance is still much larger than I want, but I'm having a problem getting it much smaller than that. So I think I'll do it this way first, and then we'll see if we need to smash them in a little closer. My razor blades do have a little bit of rust on them, so they're not quite perfect, which is sort of irritating. But anyway, that's where we are so far. Alright, well, I've got a pretty good pattern. It's looking a little too bright on the camera, unfortunately, but maybe I'll take some stills, and it's not too bad. It's got some weird little edges on it, but the basic bars are fairly good. Again, I can't do much about the interesting camera shadow. Very square, many of them. So again, I'll just have to get rid of this. The brightness of this center one is making a mess. There, you can see them better now. So I could make a cutout for that to get the light right. Try to diminish the significance of the central maxima. So not a bad image. I'm going to have to obviously go closer to see if I can get the double dark, which I don't have currently. So this is a two-slit experiment, but there's obviously it's lacking. It's missing something. Now that might be because my hair is rather translucent, and that might be affecting the image quality. So I'm going to try spray painting it, and we'll see how that goes. But not a total failure. Again, block that. It's a fairly good image. Alrighty then. So, yeah, play around with it. And so, much better than previous effort. So, we're on the road anyway. And I'll make another video with more complete something or other regarding what I see. I'll take pictures and then make a video of the pictures, something like that. Okay, till next time.